Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake up a cocktail or other mixed drink, give it a sip, and talk a bit about it. We're continuing on our quest to work through the IBA's official list of cocktails to see how those stack up. We're in the Unforgettables section, and this week's Unforgettable is the Ramos Gin Fizz. Now, the Ramos Gin Fizz is, as its name implies, a fizz, and we've talked fizzes before in the Fizz episode and talked about their relations to Collins in the Collins episode. We have not dug into this specific fizz variant. I find it interesting that this one is in the IBA's official list, not because it's bad or uncommon as a few of the drinks in the list are, but just because it's a drink that bartenders don't really like to make as a general rule, and in a particularly busy bar, you might not get one. And we'll talk about that a bit more as we get into it. But the Ramos Gin Fizz is the first drink since, I think, like the Boulevardier, if not earlier, that the IBA gives a history for, which is great. It's weird though because it appears to be wrong. So I don't know why they've skipped so many drinks if they are going to bring it back for one that's not correct. But it's very close to being correct, so we'll talk about that. So there was a gentleman called Henry Charles Ramos. According to David Wondrich, he was known as Carl in day-to-day life, so that could be the case. I've seen advertisements for his bar that refer to him as Brother H.C. Ramos, so I don't know if that was just a style or if people actually called him Brother Ramos. No idea. He was in New Orleans, and in 1888 he took over a bar called the Imperial Cabinet. And it is at that bar that he created this fizz. And from all accounts, he created it early on, so right about 1888. IBA agrees with us so far here. They've got the name the same. They don't have the Carl bit, but that's fine. And they have the 1888, but they say he created it at something called the Myers. I don't really know how the words are supposed to work together. I don't know if it's Myers Table, International Hotel, or if it's Myers International Hotel Table, because it's partially in French, but Myers clearly isn't French, so I think it's maybe Myers Table d'Hôtel International, maybe. I can't find any evidence of this place existing. Every search I did on Google for this just gave me things that were quoting the IBA's description. So I'm not going to say it's definitely wrong. Certainly, then as now, lots of bars and saloons and things are connected to hotels or adjacent to them or something. I see advertisements for his bar after the Imperial Cabinet say, like, right next to, I don't remember, Smith's Hotel or something. So maybe this is a place that is relevant. I just find it weird that the IBA names this hotel that I don't know if it exists when we know for sure the name of his bar. Those complaints out of the way. He created this drink. It's a fizz with a bit more going on, and we'll cover some of what more is going on in there. What was interesting about it, and what is still interesting about it, is you have to shake the ever-loving crap out of this drink. So in his initial incarnation at the Imperial Cabinet, he would employ a set of shakermen for each bartender. So the bartender would do all the mixing, put it into a shaker tin, and then hand it to the shakerman behind him, and the shakerman would then have to shake it, according to reports, for 15 minutes. Now, 15 minutes seems excessive, but certainly much longer than a traditional drink. When he changed bars a few years later, he went to a system where you still had a row of shakermen, but they would all be involved in the shaking of each drink. So you would hand the shaker to person one, they'd shake for 40 seconds until they were, done shaking, hand it to the next guy, and supposedly he'd have as many as 35 shakermen working at once, which is crazy. Also, this drink has an egg white in it, as fizzes do. It's a lot of egg whites if you are running a bar busy enough to support having 35 shakermen as well as multiple bartenders working at once. He was going through thousands of eggs. The numbers, I question some of the numbers, but supposedly he was like the biggest consumer of eggs in possibly the US at the time. Crazy. He ran his own giant hennery, which was like the largest one of those around, and then he had so many egg yolks left over that he invented a sherry flip that was specific to his bar. I mentioned last week when we were talking about flips that there's a bit of a connection to this week's, and there that is. He also would offer free omelets in his restaurant, yolk-only omelets. If you bought enough drinks, he would feed you. And then he would also send yolks to bakeries all over the place. So just a crazy story and set of events. But what's the drink itself? Well, it's a fizz, so there's a carbonated water element, there's a base spirit, there's some egg white, and there's some citrus. But here we're going to add in a couple more ingredients. What's interesting is this recipe stayed fairly true to his original. We know his original because during Prohibition, he actually gave an interview where he said, I know no one's allowed to make these, but here's the recipe in case you want it. So we have his recipe from the 20s, which apparently is the original. The only real changes since then are the lack of reference to gin type and the addition of one ingredient that he doesn't mention. Otherwise, proportions are actually pretty close here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start building this drink. All right, let's start off with the make or break ingredients of the drink, meaning if there's too much of either of these, especially one of them, the drink will be ruined. So let's build in that order so that if somehow we get too much, we can easily start over. First thing we want, which goes all the way back to the original recipe, is orange blossom water. We've discussed this product before. I use just a few drops of it when I make my grenadines. Same here. We want, just having that open for a couple seconds, the whole room smells like orange blossom water. We want about 3 drops. So that is very little. I want just... so that is about 1/4 of a bar spoon, which is on the high end of what you want. This stuff is so potent, but it's amazing. And then the one ingredient that doesn't show up in early fizz recipes is vanilla extract. We want 2 drops of this. This is a great place to go for a Mexican vanilla extract. If you're like me, you keep a lot of vanilla extracts around. I think Mexican vanilla extracts are some of the best, but they have some volatile compounds that really quickly evaporate under heat. So using it in baked goods, you really don't get what you're paying for here. But here is a great place to use it. Again, just want a couple drops here of some good quality vanilla extract. Now for a fruit complement, we're going to want both lemon and lime. We're going to start with lime, wherein I want 15 milliliters, which is right about 1/2 ounce. And of lemon, we want about the same. The citrus here is obviously important for flavor, but also in egg white drinks, you need a certain level of acidity for the egg to properly foam. So really critical here to have enough of that in. Then we want 1 ounce or 30 milliliters of our simple. I'm using my 2-to-1 white simple. And we want 2 ounces or 60 milliliters of heavy cream. For those of you across the pond, that'd be double cream. Though if you wanted it a little lighter, using some sort of a 50/50 or a light whipping cream or something like that would be perfectly fine. And then we need the white of 1 egg. And you definitely want to avoid getting any yolk into an egg white foaming drink like this because the protein in the yolk is quite a bit different from what's in the white, and you'll actually, not only will the yolk itself not foam up like the white, but it will stop the white from doing its work. Finally, we need our base spirit, and that is of course gin. The IBA here just says gin with no specifier. Ramos is clear that it should be Old Tom. And we want 1.5 ounces or 45 milliliters of that. So this is actually going to be pretty low proof considering the amount of sweetness, mixers, etc. that are going in here. Final note, in Ramos's original, he actually shakes it with soda water. That doesn't make any sense, so we're not going to be doing that. All right, we'll add some ice. And then we need to set a timer. This is a 2-part shaking process, and I'm gonna be tired afterward. We want a 2-minute clock. Here we go. Alright, you might think we're done, but we are not. First, we are going to want to double strain this back into the tin. We're double straining here, A, because it says to, but I believe the idea is when you initially add the cream, there's enough acidity in here that you will get a little bit of curdling, some small bits. And so when you shake it, most of those will go back into suspension, but if there are any bits of curdled cream, you don't need that in your life. All right, now we need to discard the ice. All right, now we need to dry shake this for another minute. So hopefully you're not tired yet. We'll also do the old dry shake trick. You can remove the spring from your Hawthorne strainer, and that will add a nice thing to help agitate the cocktail. IBA doesn't call for that, but it's a good idea. All right, 1 minute on the clock, here we go. All right, and now we're going to strain that into a highball glass. We don't want this completely full, so we'll see what the volume's like here. But I definitely need, yeah, that's plenty. And then now, you could just do it right now. This would work maybe slightly better if you chilled this down a little more first and let it sit. But what we want to do is add club soda to get this to foam. And I don't think that was enough shaking, to be honest. I don't think we're going to get the desired effect, but let's find out. I don't know why I'm holding this. No, not nearly enough shaking. So what we should see if that were fully agitated enough, and or if we had gone ahead and thrown this back in the freezer for a minute after letting it settle, is this head should sort of souffle-like be coming up to about here, rather than if I add any more club soda. Oh, you know what? No, I guess a little bit. Nope, but it's coming over the edges. Well, no matter. I think that's still going to be very good, and it is, I mean, it is stiff. We're holding the straw well. And that is an IBA spec Ramos Gin Fizz. So smell, I get just sort of a sweet thing. I get a little bit of the vanilla, There's kind of a lot happening there, and it's also all stuck in cream foam. Wow. That is a really cool, almost tropical explosion. I get some of that orange blossom right at the front. Then I get a hit of the tart from the lime and the lemon in there. The vanilla comes in later and is sort of at the top of the mouth. It's sort of integrated with the fat of the cream. The body's really nice with the egg white. Yeah, that's a drink that, for looking all foamy and white, and does have a foam quality to it, is still, it's super bright. But then it is fatty as well. That cream, you do feel a little bit of the like butter fat. That's really tasty, really bright, fun. No note of alcohol in there at all. The Old Tom is doing something. I get just a hair of like a herbal character that's sort of middle of the mouth, right toward the front of the drink. I get a little bit of the herbal character in with the citrus, but you'd never recognize that as alcohol if you weren't looking for it. All right, let's make a totally unrelated fizz. All right, on to variant number 2. This one is called a Chicago Fizz. Now, it's not really related to the Ramos Fizz at all, which also is sometimes called a New Orleans Fizz. But the Ramos Fizz is just a fizz variant, so there aren't really Ramos Fizz variants other than, I'm sure a lot of folks might use dry gin in there or something like that. But we're just gonna do a totally different fizz, and I've never tried this before, but it's called the Chicago Fizz. Let's see how it goes. We're going to start with the juice of a lemon. We want about half an ounce, so that is 15 milliliters. Lemon's a weird shape. Then we want just a 1/4 ounce of simple. This is again my 2-to-1 white simple. So 1/4 ounce, that's about 7.5, 8 milliliters. Then we've got a weird spirit component in this one. First, you may remember it from such exciting things as last week's episode, we have some tawny port, which we want by the full ounce, 30 milliliters. And then blackstrap rum. Now, blackstrap rum gets a bit of a bad rap because lots of folks will say it's not really a kind of rum, which I get because it's not. It is often just other rum that's colored weird or has added stuff to it. There's lots to be argued about with blackstrap rum. I'm not here to tell you it's the greatest product in the world, but I am here to tell you that I like it in a number of applications. And I think that Cruzan, who also gets a bit maligned sometimes, provides great products for the money. 1 ounce or 30 milliliters of that. And finally, our egg white. All right, we're gonna add some ice to the equation. This one's also going to need a bit of a special shaking procedure. We don't call out times on this one, and the lack of all that cream and stuff in here means we need to shake it a little bit less, though it's still a bit more than your average shake. Let's get going. So that's shake 1. We're going to again do a separate dry shake. This time no need to double strain since we don't have any of that cream in there. And I'm again going to use the coil shake, dry shake. shaking. We're going to just slightly modify our procedure for actually making the fizz. We're going to try something a little different here. I've measured out 1 ounce or 30 milliliters of soda water. And what I want to do is combine these together into the glass. Now I've reserved some of the product in here, obviously. We're going to chill this for just a minute. Yeah, so this glass obviously is not ideal, but I don't have any actual fizz glasses, so that's what we had to go with based on this volume. But we got a nice foam up, nice separation there. That's kind of what I'm looking for out of a fizz. Oh yeah, nice stiff foam. All right, and this is a Chicago fizz. That's bonkers. It's good, but it is bonkers. It's really sweet. Obviously, that's not a surprise. Everything in it's sweet. Port is sweet. Blackstrap rum is the sweetest of the rums. And then we had a little bit of simple in there as well. But the sweetness is kind of cool. At the front hit, you get the tartness from the orange and sugar combo mixed with the bright fruity notes of the port, and those go bam. And then as it breaks over your tongue, you get sort of on your tongue and toward the back of the palate, you get the rum more molassesy, sort of that place, whereas the other fruits of the port open up in a higher place toward the back of your mouth. Yeah, that's a cool drink. It's not going to go in my normal repertoire. It is really sweet and doesn't taste like alcohol at all. Again, this is fruit punch almost. I wonder if a hit of Ango wouldn't be out of place here. Obviously, a lot of it's going to get lost in the foam, but some of it got through, and we'll taste that foam in just a minute. So the nose of the Ango is really nice as I'm sipping. And yes, you know what? That totally calms down that initial really bright fruit of the port on top of the sweet and sour lemon thing. That's better. This is actually more into the realm of something I could get down with. Let's see what that foam tastes like specifically. The foam is very, very Ango, very bitter. Not unpleasant, but very Ango forward. But if we had added the Ango during shaking, the foam would have been, uniform with everything else, and we wouldn't have it concentrated there. Yeah, I recommend this drink with 2 to 3 healthy dashes of Ango, or something similar. You could use like Fee Brothers Old Fashioned bitters; those would probably be good here. Something like that. I wouldn't go anything too fruit forward, I don't think. You could go crazy though. Well, thanks for coming along with me today as we revisited fizzes, stopping in New Orleans and Chicago for their 2 signature fizzes. I should mention that while the Chicago Fizz was apparently from Chicago, we only know of it because it was popular at the Waldorf Astoria in New York in the teens, and someone there said they got it from Chicago. So who the heck knows on that one. That's it for this episode. I would appreciate like, share, subscribe, the other things. Leave a comment. That's a thing. Watch other videos on the channel. That's a thing. Watch this video on a loop while you sleep each night. All of these are options to support the channel. Visit the blog at shakingamsipping.com. That's where we'll have a write-up on this and each other drink. And most weeks, the day after the episode posts, we will have IBA in real life, where we visit a local Seattle cocktail bar to see how they make the drink, if it's common there, etc. I don't know that I'm going to go force any of my bartender friends to make one of these, but we will see. The way you'll know if that's going to be on the vlog or not is by following on Twitter at shaking_sipping for those types of updates. We'll be back next week for the next drink on the IBA's list. Until then, happy sipping. Cheers.